Hello, and welcome to another episode of Disrupt Your Now, the show for entrepreneurs who are ready to shake things up. Tonight, our guest is Jason Croft. Jason, you've been in TV and film for like 30 years, 20, 30, something like that. And the name of your company is Media Leads, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So, look, y'all, I'm going to let Jason introduce himself, tell us about his background, and then we'll go from there. But I can't wait for everybody to hear about the product that we were talking about earlier. So,
Oh
take it
yeah.
away, Jason.
Why, thank you. I appreciate it. Happy to be here. Thanks for
Yeah.
having me on. Um, anybody who knows me knows I'm obnoxious enough that a chance to talk about myself. Oh my gosh, you may not ask another question tonight, Lisa. I don't
That's
know.
fun.
Uh, no, I have been doing this for 30 years. I started in high school working for a production company on the video side of things. Always had the plan and dream working in movies and doing all of that. Where it came from, I really have no idea, but it was just kind of there.
Yeah.
Um, and so I had these parallel tracks going for a while of, working in on the video side of things, corporate events and all of that, while working in independent film and doing all of that as well for a number of years. And just a blast, working in, reality TV and doing some of that kind
Oh,
of stuff. And
fun.
it was, just an amazing journey that, took me all over the world
Mhm.
with a couple of clients as well. And that's just a blast. Um, and then around, gosh, it was crazy, maybe 2010 or so, that passion I had. Everything I wanted to do ever was make movies. That was
Uh-huh.
the end goal of everything, right? If somebody came out and was like, "Here's $100 million. What are you gonna do tomorrow?"
Make a movie.
Cool. I'm gonna go make a movie. Like that was it, right?
Yeah.
And around 2010 or so, like that just, it went away almost like a switch, like off.
Oh,
It
huh.
was interesting, weird, didn't know what to do. Like, from high school to then of going, like, knowing what I wanted, knowing that to have that emptiness, what came
So you
in.
just all of a sudden were kind of like, this is not fulfilling or whatever. I'm not
Kind of,
interested anymore. What's next?
yeah, yeah, and it
Yeah.
just completely went away, which was crazy. Um, and then what really filled that came in and filled that void, I guess you could say, is business, and specifically marketing and sales, and that sort of like passion and love for that. Um, while I was, still in the movie side of things, I most of what I did was director of photography, so lighting, shooting,
Okay.
doing all of that. But I started producing as well. So the business, the logistics, that side of
Mhm.
film was lighting me up just as much as the creative being on set. And that's a weird combo. Like it's a,
It is
like,
because it takes totally different brain functions.
yeah, it's strange. Like you're a producer and a DP. What? That doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense, right? So, but so that the inklings, the beginnings of that like enjoyment of business was there then, but then it really kind of came full force as I left the film side of things. I was just trying to marry those two things for a long time. Um, and then I think leading up quickly to now, but I got in front of the camera simply as a just a marketing tactic, right? And something I'm sure we'll talk about tonight is,
Yeah.
creating content and doing what you're doing with your show, like the need, the benefits, all of that.
Mhm.
But, this was maybe 2016 or so. I was working for a production company,
Okay.
and we had a studio, 3 camera setup, all of that stuff sitting back there. And I just discovered the startup scene in Dallas, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, okay, this is really cool." What there's all sorts of networking events and things like that, and you can show up and stand in a corner and, hope to talk to somebody. But I was like, "What can we do?" Right?
Mhm.
So I thought, well, I listen to podcasts all the time. I listen to these kind of shows. What if we did a show around the startup community here in
Ah,
Dallas, invite them in? We were sitting here with the set, right?
yeah.
And I'll sit in the chair and ask questions because nobody else is going to do it. And that was the first, that was it. Like,
That's
uh,
cool.
it was, it was amazing. We did, about 86 episodes in a year or so.
Mhm.
And, in person, bringing people in the studio. And it was an amazing marketing tool because it got people in the door. It wasn't just showcasing these folks. They were coming into the
Yeah.
facilities, right? And getting to know you, build that relationship.
Mhm.
But three crazy things happened. One is I just fell in love with it,
Mhm.
right? Like I
Mhm.
was like, I may not have any business doing it, but I'm gonna keep doing it because I love it. It was
Yeah.
that connection. Um, it did work as a great marketing tool. I mean, I got a seat at the table in the startup community immediately. It was just
Mhm.
like, oh wow, he's shining a spotlight on us. Let's jump in and engage.
Yeah.
Um, and then I built, I mean, the most incredible network of people that are still just dear friends today.
Mm.
We talk about, building a network and networking and all of that stuff at this sort of business level. But
Yeah.
I mean, I have again just dear friends in my life who I couldn't imagine not having in my life
Mhm.
that came from that show. Right.
Right, true
Yeah.
relationships. You're not out there just collecting figurative business cards, people's
Right.
names and whatever. Yeah, you're building true relationships, and that's so totally different than what most people do.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it's, it's great when there's, and I just love that in and of itself, put everything
Yeah,
else aside, the video and all of that kind of stuff. Like I discovered during that time too, that's what lights me up, right?
yeah.
Is the conversation.
Mhm.
Um, and I was like, wow, this is interesting because I wanted to be that person. I know when I read Malcolm Gladwell's The Tipping Point,
Oh, yeah.
all those years ago, reading about, connectors, mavens, all of that stuff, that connector, that description of that connector. And I was like, holy smokes, I don't know why I want to be that.
Yeah.
Right. And I was the furthest thing in the world. I was the person who, if I ever went to a networking event, I was the one standing in the corner, like, if someone
So
comes
you
talk
were
to me, that's cool.
shy?
But
You were
oh my
shy,
gosh.
you just didn't know what to talk about or what?
Yeah. Terrified of like starting a conversation,
Yeah,
all of that. Right.
yeah.
Um, and then just through purposefulness, of like I'm going to be that somehow
Uh-huh.
and learning and going through those skills, to being that connector a few years later and running a networking group and,
So
doing that every week and all that.
I didn't realize that you were running a networking group. Tell us about that.
Back in Dallas. So I'm in
Oh,
Colorado
okay.
now.
Mhm,
But I inherited it. It was started already. They
mhm.
needed a co-host. They needed somebody to kind of take over. And I
Okay.
did that and kept that going and did that, it was like every Tuesday for 3 or 4
Wow.
years. Um,
So
and that
you
was
went from
just
standing in the
wonderful.
corner to being the man.
Yeah. Yeah. And just, and again, I think finding that because not everyone does, even though everyone should get some skills and be good at networking and
Mhm.
all of that, especially if you run your own business and all that. Not everyone loves it, but there was something in me that was just like, I don't know, that's oxygen, right?
Yeah.
That
Mhm.
that connection. Um, but yeah, so after I left that company, started a show. I was like, I have to keep a show going of some
Mhm.
kind. So I was like, what can I? It's just gonna be me. So I've got to keep this simple, single
Yeah.
camera. I've got to edit this thing now. Um, and so I did Seinfeld style, right? Threw
Uh-huh.
people in the car, and
Oh, fun.
oh yeah, it was a blast, and it was a nice, unique thing enough that I mean, it was so funny. I mean, the amount of multimillionaires and business owners and sales professionals and all these people who were in my little Kia, were driving around having this conversation. But that's a big lesson too that came from all of that, really from both shows, is that we're so fearful. We talked about this a little bit before the show. We're
Mhm.
so fearful of having that, jumping in, starting a show or doing whatever because I've got to have a big audience before I could
Yeah.
ask someone to be on or anything like that. It was incredible to learn that almost nobody says no,
Yeah.
like to coming on a show because it doesn't matter if you have 3 followers out there. It's a chance for them to showcase themselves.
That's right. And even if you only have 3 followers, what if one of those followers is the perfect person that they need to connect with.
Yeah, absolutely. Give me once for
Okay.
some reason.
I'm going to take a sip of beer.
All right. I don't know if some crazy my mouse left me, my earbuds left me.
Uh-oh.
No, I can still hear you through this other. So we'll
Yeah, I can
go.
hear you fine.
Yeah, just my AirPods just
Huh.
went
Maybe they're
away, and then
dead.
I have no mouse either.
Uh,
So anyway.
well, that sucks.
But yeah, then through the gosh, then the ridiculous pandemic aspect of everything, I had to find a way to plus moving, to Colorado. So I didn't have that same network of folks
Yeah.
and then combining that with it not being able to in-person interview, I had to
Hmm.
create that format and figure out a format that, we could do. Obviously, we've got the Zoom kind of thing
Yeah.
um, to do all this, but how can I still make it look good? How can I make
Yeah.
this look professional and stuff? So once I worked that out, I mean, it was such a blessing, right? Because it allowed me to now open up to the world, right? In terms
Yeah.
of who I would have on the show and everything. So strategy and action is my one of my latest shows that I have that's, we're talking, just like this and bringing people
Uh-huh.
on, and it's been a blast.
So, what took you to Colorado?
The mountains.
Okay, so you just wanted to move there. Yeah,
Yeah, I've been wanting to get here for so many years.
I love the
Um,
mountains.
oh, it's just
Yeah,
something I don't know what it is, but
yeah.
like my soul needed it. I'm Texas boy at heart, probably
Uh-huh.
always will be. Um, but man, I needed mountains in my life.
That crisp, fresh air and
Oh
four
yeah.
seasons and all that.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
the actually having a summertime that you can walk outside and want to be
Uh-huh.
out there, it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yep. Yep. Well, talking about being able to move, I started my business in 96, web and business strategy. I was a CPA before that, and I owned two other businesses. And the minute that started fiddling around with web design in 95, I dropped my CPA license, everything. I'm like, this is what I'm doing because I could pull everything together, all my business background, all that. But I hated accounting, even though I was good at it. I hated it. Didn't like the people I work with, all that. And before that, I didn't think I was creative. But anyway, I immediately saw, even though that was still in the dial up days, I immediately saw this is something that I can live anywhere and do it. And I'm one of these
Mm,
people, I don't like to be tied down. It doesn't mean I want to move all the time, but I just like knowing if I want to do something, I can,
oh,
you know?
yeah. Whatever that is, and like
Yeah.
certain individuals and entrepreneurs specifically, I think just that
Yep.
having that option, having that unlimited,
Yep.
ability to go somewhere, do what you want at the drop of a hat. Like
Uh-huh.
we'll do that extra work and put in more hours than we would have with a full-time job just for
Yep.
that freedom like that.
Yeah, for sure. So you moved to Colorado and then you started this business there?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, I was freelance working on my own, before the move and everything.
Mhm.
I actually had a full-time job that got me out here, a sales job. I actually wanted a sales job. I wanted it was one of those things, kind of like being good at networking, right? Like it was
Yeah.
one of those core skills that I knew was really important. And I wanted to have that sort of boot camp, like
Mhm.
doing the reps, I have to
Yeah.
do this.
Uh-huh.
And so that was great. That brought me out here and did that for a little while. And then again, same time, kind of the pandemic time and all of that.
Uh-huh.
Then some things changed and was able to just start media leads and kind of figure out the latest thing and really kind of help people create shows and do things that I found to be so powerful and helpful.
Yeah, well, and I know myself included, we get so sick of having to create content. We know we need to do it. Now, I love doing the show, but everything else, I'm like, this sucks. The reason I love doing the show is because I just get to talk and it's live. So I don't have to worry about, ed- don't have to worry about planning and editing. It's just like whatever, it's out there in the wild. But it's just, I love what you're doing with the video. I've forgotten what you call the video product. Remind me, the video product with the interview.
Oh, the content growth system.
Yeah, yeah. So tell the audience about that. I think it's so cool.
Oh yeah, that's one thing I'm doing for folks is, we can hop on a Zoom type of thing like this for an
Hmm.
hour, hour and a half, and create. And then from there, I can create 48 pieces of content for you, so that like your month's taken care of in that hour and a
Yeah.
half, right? Um, and that's a combo of not just having you talk or something like that, or asking
Hmm.
you some questions, and then it goes and we chop up a big long form thing. We're pretty specific about it, and kind of like you talked about, like the web aspect, you felt it, and like you could bring in everything and do this. This is sort of
Hmm.
one of those as well, because I'm able to bring in not just push record and okay talk and I'll make some stuff, but pulling it out of you,
Yeah.
and coaching you through the process and going, oh, okay, that's awesome. I know what you're trying to say here. Let's craft it a little bit this way, um, because that promise is out there with some folks and has been for a couple of years of just
Mhm.
like, oh yeah, you just take this and repurpose the content and you go blah blah blah, like it's just this thing that's easy, right? Um,
Yeah.
and there's some nuance to it, like just like with anything, you can do it or you can do it well, and so
Right.
what I really like to work with folks on is the doing it well part, so we can really pull that out of them and craft something
Yeah.
so that, yeah, I may ask you to do this, a couple of times and going through stuff, but we're going to make sure that we get that expertise across, because from interviewing not just on these shows, but that's what I've done on the corporate side of things forever, is
Yeah.
interviews on video and CEOs and all this kind of stuff, and the most knowledgeable, wonderful people. It's very different to then appear that way on camera.
For sure.
Right.
And entrepreneurs are, for in general, we are so bad about talking about ourselves and explaining what we do, explaining it in a way that not just gets the idea across, but that gets the spirit across, and
Yeah.
um, I know I'm the worst at it. I'm really good at talking about other people and promoting other people, and I'm like, I suck at promoting myself. I want to tell you, my friend Monifa Kane says, that's fantastic. Content for the month will free up time. Yeah, Monifa, you need Jason. She owns the coolest company called Queen of Spades Style. She's been on my show and she's in my book, Disrupt Your Now. She has the coolest story of starting that. But yeah,
Nice.
hey Monifa, welcome to the show. But yeah, y'all need to hook up through LinkedIn or something.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
You got to.
yeah. But so yeah, what you're doing is so valuable because we have it in ourselves, but we don't know how to express it in a way that gets the real spirit of the meaning across, I guess.
Yeah, and it's just there's nothing natural about turning a video camera on yourself and talking into it. Like
Yeah,
there's just nothing, like we think about, like, oh, some people just have it. So like, no, it's all this workable, like practice, 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 doing the reps, because
yeah.
it's just not normal, to sit
Well, and
there and
that's why I love doing a show like this because we're just talking.
yeah,
So
and that's
this is a lot.
everything.
Yeah, and but hello, I hate just holding up the phone and talking in it. Like even if it's recorded and not live, I can't stand that because I'm like, then you're like, oh, what do I say? And I got to make sure I say it exactly right. But when you're on something like this, you're just more natural.
Oh,
So that's
it's
another good thing about what you do is you're just talking with the people, right? And
yeah.
pulling the stories out.
Yeah, and when you can, I mean, and I tell people this all the time, like as much as I do this, right? The shows, I put myself on camera and all, like, and boom, somebody just calls in the next 5 minutes and is like, "Hey, let's do a show." Cool. It's like no problem at all. The second I turn that off and I have to create an intro just talking to the camera, it's 37 takes later. It's figured out. I'm all in my head. I'm all
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
You're like, I paused too long here, or I hesitate, whatever. I know exactly what you mean. So,
yeah, but
w-
and that's the thing to realize too, is just like that's just normal, like that's, so what can we do to overcome that, right? Like
Yeah.
we all have, um, I'm still one of the worst of creating content. I'll do my shows all day, but I need to be doing just straight to video stuff, and it's still all right. I guess
Yeah, it's like, ah. All right,
we
let's
have to
see.
put those things in place to do that. Yeah.
Monifa, Monifa says it takes her about 7 times before she's happy with it. It's nerve wracking, but she also, Monifa, you do some good videos though. So, but I know that Jason could really hook you up doing something awesome for like, because the other thing that what you're doing is evergreen and it's things that can be used over and over and over. Oh, and you left out the blog post.
Yeah. So yeah, we create. So what we do in that 60 to 90 minute, what we create, right, is
Hmm.
we'll create 4 long form, which is just, 8 to 10 minutes, just YouTube's optimal. We
Yeah,
love this length of video kind of thing. That's really optimized for YouTube. Just a little bit longer form. Um, Still nothing crazy, right?
yeah.
And then each of those 4 we break down into 3 mini videos that we pull out of that. Each of those 3 videos we do in a vertical, square, and a wide format. So you have all of that. So there's all of that content to use on the various platforms so that we make them happy, right?
Yeah.
And we get the most mileage out of them. But then each of those 4 longer videos also get turned into a formatted blog post too. So you're covering, all these different modalities, and just really
And
helps.
it's
And
not just the transcript, right? Y'all actually
exactly.
write. Yeah. So, because I mean, a lot of people, all they do is just transcribe it, and that's great. That's better than nothing. But the fact that
Yeah.
y'all actually professionally write a blog post
Yeah,
with
I mean,
your form.
it's a combo, right? So it's a transcription of
Hmm.
that long form, but
Right. But
it's
not just straight
formatted.
transcript.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not this text document that you're just like, "Here, have fun." Like,
Yeah.
it looks like a blog post. Like, as soon as you
Yeah.
get, "Oh, there's my headline. There's my different thing. Here's my bullet point. Here's my,"
Yeah.
yeah.
Because even if you have the transcript, like, YouTube and everything, you can do the automatic transcripts, but you still got to dig through it and make all the corrections, and that takes forever.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, can you tell us about like some of the, have you had any funny things happen with any of the ones that you've done or any crazy stories you could tell?
Oh gosh.
Or like something that really took off that went viral or anything that you can tell us that a client
Nothing
experience.
nothing wild and viral, like, content-wise that we've
Yeah,
made. Nothing crazy like that.
but so you
Um, I
didn't have any client that like went crazy when they were interviewed. Yeah, I mean, just any funny story or anything.
no, no, most of my, and I actually wanna get back to some more, but most of my, wild story days were in the straight video production when we were
Okay, yeah.
traveling around everywhere and working with wild animals and going to Alaska and all that
Oh, that sounds fun.
that fun stuff that, my wife at the time didn't appreciate that. She's
Hey,
like, you've got kids, right? You
I
you're
caught the kid.
father, you need to be around for a while." I'm just like, "Every crazy wild animal just needs a pet. That's all they're looking for.
Yeah,
It'll be
I
fine."
caught the key words at the time. Was she your wife at the time or your wife that you have now? Said it at the time. No,
Yeah.
I'm just teasing. Just
Yeah, but it
teasing.
was, yeah, that was fun. I actually there was a couple of reality shows, like pilots that I worked on, like, back to back, and they were, like, just the exotic wildlife things and all of that stuff to where, I'm in the cages with them and
Yeah.
running around and, then becoming friends with, uh, folks who, have those parks and everything, and
Uh-huh.
so, we went to Alaska, Sharkarosa is the name of his place, so
Okay.
Scott owns that. We went to Alaska for a trip, and he's quite the enabler because he's just like me, like, we were actually leaving we were last day, we're in Alaska, we're leaving, we're heading to the airport. I'm in the front seat, got my camera there, and blah blah. All of a sudden he just slams on the brake and screams, "Bear!" Jumps out of the truck and just starts running through the forest. Like he spotted a bear. I'm going after it. And so of course I, run
You got
after
to
him.
go
So
out.
yeah. But yeah, it's like, it's a black bear. He's got a couple of black bears at his place, so
Uh,
he's just like, "Cool, we gotta find him,"
oh, that's
So
funny.
it's
That
that's one of
wow,
those.
that's cool. Um, I was wondering, so for people who, let's say it's somebody that's just starting out, they can't afford to do that thing with you. Do you have any kind of training thing, like a little mini course that people can pay and take to kind of learn what they should be doing and so they can inch towards working with you?
I don't yet. I've got a couple in the works. So one is a
Okay.
bigger program that's a done with you coaching
Uh-huh.
program. I actually like every day in the middle of it right now, like putting that together.
Hmm.
Because what I'm doing, especially the show solution, I also do a completely done for you show for folks, so they have their own show and use that as a business
Okay.
development tool.
So
Um,
basically, like I'm doing, but you manage it, produce it, everything, book the
exactly.
people. Do you book the people?
Um, Back and forth can be on
Yeah.
that. Usually it's up to them, but I'll walk
Hmm.
them through. Here's the script. Here's the reach out. Here's
Yeah.
the form. But for them, though, too, it is very much. So I'm the producer behind the glass, right? I'm actually
Yeah.
recording the episode for them, and again, that coaching comes in too, right? So after the
Yeah.
episode, oh man, this was a really good one. This was great. I think we lost him during this part, but and one of my clients actually loves it. I'll message him during the interview of just, hey, here's a little, why don't
Yeah.
you go this direction or something. Um, and that offer, that what that is, that it's just not scalable, right?
Oh,
So that's
yeah.
that's what I'm creating this kind of
Hmm.
done with you, is to help people really get things on their feet, hand holding, not just like, here's how to go do a video podcast, but actually
Yeah.
creating this thing with them so
Hmm.
that now, like, okay, training wheels are off. I can do that.
Training
Like,
wheels. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. But and then I need to do the little course thing too. That's been on the list.
That would be, if you do a paid course, then that would be, $100 or whatever. It would be somebody, if somebody's just starting out, be a way that they could learn a little bit. Then they would learn just enough to realize, I just need Jason to do it. I'm going to find the money somewhere. I just need Jason to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. People they go through sort of a roller coaster of realization. Actually, most people start with just like, oh yeah, a podcast. I can do a podcast. You
Hmm.
just like talking. I
Yeah.
can do a podcast. And then it's like, and then you get into like, okay, step one, step two, step seven, step 12, like, here's just like, what in the world? I got to get all of this stuff figured out. Are you kidding
Uh-huh.
me? But then by the time we're done on the other end of just like, oh, okay, I can do this. This isn't what I thought, but I can do this thing, right? So
Yeah.
I've done some webinars and things like that have been along those lines that help people kind of go through that a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah. So, what is your biggest advice for people who have problems creating content? So, outside of this hour-long interview, just some tips, anything that could help some people who feel stuck out there.
Yeah, there's a few things. I mean, the biggest thing is suck it up and do it.
Yeah,
Like,
suck it up, Buttercup.
exactly. I mean, there's just no, you can read about this stuff all day long. There's nothing that will substitute this, just doing the reps, but really embracing the horribleness of it, right?
Yeah.
The like, this is gonna be awful. If you want to do a show and you're interviewing folks, if that's the kind of show you want to do, right? You just gotta do it. I mean, stack the deck in your favor.
Uh-huh.
Do this, jump on. I mean, it's so easy today to jump on a Zoom, right?
Yeah.
Load it up with your friends, or don't even record, or record knowing you're going to throw them away, but like,
Yeah.
just doing the reps. And then the biggest thing, whether you're doing an interview style or straight to camera, having that outline and you're talking to camera and you're kind of a teaching kind of aspect, either one, the one thing to do that I always tell people, and I know you don't want to do it, too bad for you, do this, is listen to it back, watch it back. I'm telling
Yeah.
you, like, it is the greatest teacher in the world.
Yeah,
Like,
because then you see the things that you do right, the things you do wrong. You realize, oh, I should have. whatever. You pick up on, you learn from those things instead of just doing it and going on.
Yeah, and what it will do, it's not just for the on-camera stuff, it makes you a better communicator in real life, right? You
Yes.
learn, you listen to your things. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I sat there screaming at myself watching these things back, especially I mean, I still do it, but especially back in Startup Dallas, the first show I did, I was just like, "Finish a sentence, man. What are you doing?" I'd start a question, then go here, and then I would go here, and then I'm like, "What is happening?"
Yeah.
But
I
then I would
know, I'd be
also
like, "What was I gonna say now?" And I still do that sometimes. But I also I talk a lot, and I guess I'm ADD because my brain is, like, going everywhere, so I'll be like, "Oh, blah, blah, blah," and it has doing this has forced me to listen to the person that I'm speaking with so that the conversation can continue, it does help you with communication skills.
it's yeah, it's huge, it's everything, and because I would find myself doing that same thing and, 10 other ones in real life in a conversation, and then it would kick in. It was just like,
Yeah,
that's what you're doing.
yeah,
Finish your sentence."
that's
You
right.
know? Get it going.
Well,
And it is so much of it is just, doing it,
yeah.
and w
Well, like
I
you said, the training wheels, you got to
yeah,
do it. You can't just hop on a bike and ride it the first time. You just got to do it. You got to fall and scrape your knees.
yeah, and there's different, I mean, just cut yourself some slack, but, you know, you'll hear interviews with folks all the time who are crazy successful, have their millions of followers and all that stuff, but they've left their horrible videos up, their first, 20 videos that
Yeah.
are awful. They've left them up. They haven't hidden them
I'm
because there's
glad they
still
do because a
yeah,
lot of
there's
people,
value there.
yeah, a lot of people go and they're like, "Oh, I don't want those old ones in there because they're embarrassing." And I'm like, to me, that's a disservice to other people. First, it's a disservice to the person that was a guest because it's not their fault if it sucked. But it's also a disservice to the listeners because then the listeners think you were always perfect instead of being able to see that growth curve or
Yeah.
hear that growth curve or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's crazy. And there's so much value in all of it. But, you know, don't just create content because, people like me have been yelling at you to create content or something like that too. It needs to
Mhm.
make sense for you. It needs to make sense for your business, and then find that area that you are strong in. I mean, we're in a time that you better figure out either audio or video,
Mhm.
um, to really move the needle on your business, or find someone who is strong in that area that can represent your business or whatever, because that's just the world we live in, right?
Right.
um, some people are just way better on the written page, though, and
Mhm.
some people, they can talk all day long, but man, don't put a camera. And fortunately, just an audio podcast even is so flippin' strong for, I
Mhm.
mean, it's actually still rated like the highest in terms of qualified buyers,
Yeah.
like coming from podcast, just
Mhm.
audio only podcast. It's huge.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I do this live because, like I said, that way it's in the wild. I can't get all OCD, but I am in the process of um, making episodes of traditional podcasts because, like I told you earlier, when I mow, I listen to podcasts all the time, and so you're not. Yeah, I could do it, have a video on and listen, but then I'm wasting bandwidth, and so have it both ways. Have it so that whoever's listening or watching can access content the way that they like it. Like you were saying, long form, short form, whatever.
Oh yeah, and that's the beauty too when it comes to podcasts, especially.
Hmm.
It there's a whatever's comfortable for you and makes sense for, take into account your audience and what their
Yeah.
maybe, attention span is or whatever it may be, but never assume it, because there is a successful example of a podcast of about every length you could possibly imagine. Like there's,
Yeah.
I mean, Frank Kearns is 2 to 3 minutes of
Hmm.
him, you know, going through, and I love Frank Kearns to death, but I don't like, it drives me crazy. Like stop, start, start, like
Yeah, because you got,
start the,
yeah.
you
I'm
know?
like, I like something that's at least 30 minutes because usually I'm doing something when I'm listening or I'm driving. So
Yeah.
I like something that's at least 30 minutes up to an hour.
Oh,
Generally,
yeah.
not anything longer than that
But
because,
it's crazy successful. Like the amount of download, like it's
yeah.
crazy the successful. I love a 2.5 hour episode from Tim Ferriss. You know,
Uh huh.
some people won't like. So there's the spectrum, but there's a successful example anywhere in between. You know, so just don't get hung up in all of that. And I know it's easy to say, but you just have to jump in and go. You know,
That's such a great point, though, to remind everybody that they don't have to be like everybody else. Figure out
yeah,
what works for them, and it's probably going to change over time. Somebody might think, "I want to do a long show, or I want to do a short show, or whatever," and as they start doing it, it's going to morph to however ends up feeling the most comfortable for them and their guests.
and so that's a big thing. Is yeah, because a lot of times, so there's two sides of this that point, right? One is, yeah, we get locked into like, oh, it's got to be this way, and
Mhm.
50 episodes, and it has to be the same way because this is how I started. No, you can change it all the time.
Yeah,
The flip side of that, though, too, is a lot of things I walk my clients through in the beginning is, landing on a voice, a tone,
yeah,
and a reason for your podcast, right? I'll
yeah.
give you I'll give you an example. So, I actually got this phenomenal advice from Matthew Pollard. Um, and he was on my show, my driving around show, Jason Croft Show. And he'd come into town. I think I don't know if he was still in Australia at the time, but anyway, he'd come into Dallas. He's an amazing author, speaker, coach, awesome guy. And we drove around, had this great episode, and we parked. He's like, "Do you mind if you can record this if you want to, but do you mind if I give you some advice?" He's like, "We've just talked for the last hour. I feel great. You've, shined this, spotlight on me and asked me all the questions, and I got to answer and talk for an hour. But you're doing yourself a disservice because you're not positioning yourself as an expert in this process." And it was a
Yeah,
phenomenal lesson that, I mean, I structured my entire news show with this in mind so that um it's not me just going, "Oh, yeah, that's amazing. That's awesome.
yeah.
You're the best," which is easy for me to do because I have awesome, amazing people come on. And I just
Right.
like,
Yeah.
"Oh, yeah, tell me that again. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's so awesome." But it was doing myself a disservice. And I talk to my clients about that of positioning yourself because you already have some authority. It's your show, right? So you have
Yeah.
that. So lean into that. And so very specifically, strategy and action is about, we'll have it around a topic. Obviously, whoever comes on, we're going to get into their background, we're going to get into their
Yeah.
expertise, we're going to shine that spotlight in them, but we're always talking about a topic. So it's two people having this conversation about this thing, and that's a
Hmm.
very different dynamic. So I bring that example in because that's a decision I had to make because I will default to, "Oh yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
and so you may want to have you want to have this like funny tone like so and so, right? And you're
Yeah.
good at it. It's not like a make believe thing. But I really want to, be humorous, or I want to make sure that I get something out of a guest that they've never asked somewhere else. But you
Yeah.
make these decisions, and I'm serious, like especially in the beginning, you've got to like throw it on a post-it note, have it up in front of you during the shows, because otherwise, those decisions you've made, like this show that you want to craft, it'll like once you go,
Yeah.
like that guest is going to go somewhere and you're going to go somewhere and the conversation will take you. So if you don't have that thing bringing you back to like, "Oh yeah, we were supposed to be talking about this subject," or,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's right, I really wanted this kind of tone from it."
Hmm.
And again, back to the change, like you can change that, but try it for 10 episodes, try it for 20 episodes, and and
Yeah.
and then kind of make those
Yeah. Don't just
decisions.
change it all the time because your audience kind of needs to know what to expect.
Yeah.
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 But I know what you're talking about with the shining the light on yourself because I've had shows in the past that I have a blast with everybody I talk to, but sometimes I'll go, you know what? It's awesome having all these people on, and I do great at like helping promote them, but I'm also supposed to get something out of it. So sometimes I have to consciously remind myself that I need to have make some input so that I'm not just like, oh yeah, whatever. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, and that's a great point too in terms of the reason for the whole show and this endeavor, because most people that we're talking to and feel like, oh, I need to create content of some kind and all
Yeah,
that. They're business owners, right? And so I am super adamant in guiding people to, like, let's make this a win for your business from episode one, right?
yeah,
This is the big difference, right? This isn't the typical content marketing. Hey, let's do something for a year, put out value. Eventually,
mhm,
we'll build an audience. Somebody will be interested. All that stuff will happen. And
yeah,
that's great. They're not wrong for talking about that stuff.
mhm.
But let's flip this around so that, again, from episode one, this is good for your business.
You're being
So,
strategic.
being strategic, the guest that you have on your show should be your ideal client,
Yeah.
right? Or an existing client who is like, oh, you're awesome. This is what we accomplished
Hmm.
together. Great. This is cool. Or a strategic partner, right?
Yeah.
Somebody who has an audience of your ideal clients, and
Yeah.
being purposeful with all that.
Hmm.
Plus, each episode, I mean, we're creating primetime TV for ourselves, right? So let's have our advertisements, right? Let's have
Yeah.
the beginning of the show. Oh, by the way, this is what I'm doing right now. If you're interested, blah, blah, blah. The end of
I'm
the show.
super bad at that. I'm
We
so bad
again
at and I
back
and I
to it's
always
hard.
forget to go get the book or whatever. I always forget to do that.
Oh yeah. And again, if we don't have it right in front of us of like, okay,
Yeah.
this happens at this time. Because you
Mhm.
and I are both very similar in our shows. We just want to, like, let's just have a conversation. Let's just
Yeah.
go. Like, that's our comfort zone. That's great.
Uh-huh.
But even in that, especially since you're live and you can't go and put it back in later,
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
Uh-huh.
that you need that reminder, right? Like, oh, that's right. I don't know. We're 30 minutes in. Like, this is the time in the show where I talk about my whatever that is,
Yeah, yeah.
and not to be. So many people, more than anything, they get hung up on like, oh, I can't advertise my own stuff in my show or something. Like,
Uh-huh.
are you kidding me? Like, that's
Uh,
exactly what. Like, why are we doing all of this? Like, there's
Yeah.
multiple reasons, and it's great, but it's a lot of work. If you're hiring somebody to do it, there's a big expense. If you're doing it all yourself, there's a lot of time that it
And
takes.
that's an expense.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
let's make it make sense for our business at the same time.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
and there's just a few things that you can do in there to make sure that you do that.
yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you brought that up because that is something that I'm always like, even though I don't want the show to be like, these are the questions, a lot of people have like specific questions there. I don't want
Yeah.
to do that. I want it to be free flowing, but I still need to be strategic. At the end of the day, I need to make sure that I'm getting something out of it. And I don't
Yeah.
mean making some money necessarily right then or whatever, but that whatever, that it's not just to shine the spotlight on the guest.
Yeah, and and again, that's just sitting down for 20 minutes and going and just deciding, okay,
Yeah.
here's how I'm going to do this. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have a pre-roll at the beginning of every episode that
Uh-huh.
is a little bit about me. Why somebody's new. Awesome. Here's what the show is. Here's why the show exists. I've
Yeah.
got this book. Let's get into it. That's
And
just
I
plain.
have that on the traditional podcast episodes. I do have that.
Nice.
I have
Nice.
an intro and an outro that I add to it, but I don't do it on the live. I'm really bad about not doing anything, strategic like that, really.
But you're
So,
repurposing these
yes, yeah,
over
yeah, I
there to
do.
that stuff. So,
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's huge.
yeah, yeah. Well, I was going to ask you, do you have any advice like using hashtags and stuff when they're posting their videos like YouTube, Instagram or anything? Do you have any advice in that? Because people are like, oh, everybody gets hung up on should I use 3 or 5 or 6 or do you have any strategic advice, not just about numbers, but about how to find good hashtags to help you get your content in front of the right people
Not from a hashtag thing. I'm not, you know, d-
or anything like that to attract, yeah, or get found?
yeah, the biggest thing I would say that kind of like I do with my shows and all of that is on the YouTube side of things, making sure that because that's really our like you talk about evergreen content, that's
Yeah.
our hub, right? There's so much power
Mhm.
still in YouTube and being purposeful there with optimizing the videos so that um you can really get strong on the SEO side of things so that you're found in YouTube beyond people who already know you or they're looking for
Okay,
that
so
guest or something.
explain to me and the audience. I think I know at least part of what you're talking about, but can you give us more detail?
Yeah, so there's, in having in your title, in your description, all of those places
Hmm.
and then using a tool like vidIQ or totally blanking on the name, the one that I actually use. I'm gonna look it up since we're live.
Okay.
Um, but using a tool like that, that's it's kind of a keyword finder, but
Yeah.
it's all for video. So it brings up so you can in YouTube, there's a traditional SEO, like somebody searching, most
Hmm.
YouTube is how to stuff.
Right.
You may, formulate your titles around that. You may do something like that to
Hmm.
get found that way. Um, but you can also the ideal spot is showing up on that side, right? On that, somebody's watching a
Related
video
video. Yeah.
exactly and popping up
Uh-huh.
there. And so the tools like this let you jump in and okay, here's who's ranking for that. Here's what they're using. Here's the tags they're using. Here's all
Okay.
of this. So you can copy a lot of that stuff and have a similar title, play on that fits
Uh-huh.
that makes sense for your video. And especially when you're creating like training content, the interviews are going to go where they go, but the
Yeah.
training content, you can actually craft your content around that research, right? So that
Uh-huh.
your, you may know that your audience they love this person, this person, this person. Well, you can really target those channels and research. Okay, how are they titling? How are they making their thumbnails? How are they um,
That's a great
their
point.
tags and all of that so that you just up your chances for showing up in that related because
Yeah.
that's the bump, right? And
See
then like
what's working for other people
exactly.
and learn from it. How much
Yeah.
difference does the description make?
It's there. It's another layer in
Just
there, right?
another like, yeah.
In
So,
terms of a chance for put keywords in there and
mhm.
you can still kind of stuff keywords,
Yeah,
on YouTube where you can't really on the blog post side of things and get
right.
penalized. Like there's still some things like that that you can do.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna do what I said earlier that I do. I forgot what I was gonna say. You forgot the name of the tool, and now I forgot what I
That's
was
right.
gonna say to
I forgot
you.
to look it up too. Let's look
Um,
that up.
I do have a funny story to tell about myself since I forgot what I was gonna say on that
Tube Buddy. Tube Buddy. That's the one I
Tube
use.
Buddy. Okay,
Yeah.
TUBE Buddy. Okay.
Yep. Okay.
All right,
Sorry.
audience, y'all got to check it out because I'm going to check it out.
Okay. Funny
Oh,
story.
by the way, Jason, um, your name, I always think of Jason Bourne and Laura Croft because I kept going, Jason Croft. I'm like, that name is really, and then I was like, oh, that's
Something
what it is,
familiar.
Jason. And then the picture of you with your hair like a movie star.
That's
But
exactly the motion I make. Everybody's like, yeah.
I love that picture of you, though. Your hair is so awesome in it. It is. It's great.
Thank you.
But I was going to tell you back. I guess it was 2020. Isn't that when COVID started? Whatever. I'm like, my everything's a blur the past few years. So Steve Sims was fussing me. You have to do video, blah blah blah. And I'm like, but I don't want to because, like I said, I hate holding the phone up. And you got to do it. So the very first, and that's exactly how he talks.
I was gonna say that's your Steve Sims voice.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah, the East London Steve Sims. Um, so I did not want to do it. I mean, I knew I needed to, but I was like, So I took a gift bag. It had Sylvester the cat all over. I took a gift bag and I cut out eye holes and a mouth hole and put it over my head. And I went outside and there were like azaleas blooming. And I was just showing the azaleas. I'm like, oh, aren't they pretty? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm saying, we know we're supposed to do video, but we don't do it. You couldn't see me. And then I sat up and you could see me with this bag on. And I'm like, I really do not want to be doing this, but Steve Sims is making me, or something like that. It was so funny. And I literally had somebody message me and said, what filter is that you use? I'm like, it's called a gift bag and a pair of scissors.
That's awesome.
And it was somebody I knew. I'm going to call her out. It was my cousin. She literally thought it was a filter. She was teasing me about it the other day because I said, I've got to go do a video about something. She goes, don't forget your gift bag filter. So anything that makes you, if you got to do something that you don't want to do and you feel uncomfortable, just figure out a stupid way to do it, or just something. I call it tearing the Band-Aid off,
Yeah.
And then, like, especially with women, we're like, oh, her makeup, her hair, we're too fat, whatever. So another thing that I did is I was out mowing, and of course, you're never going to look worse than you do then. 95-degree weather, sweaty hair everywhere, and I took my phone out then and did a video talking about how I love to mow with the push mower for my workout. My husband hates lawn work, so he uses a riding mower and rides around and drinks beer. And I was saying, at the end of the day, they're both tools. They get the job done, just like web apps and tools. And so my point was, stop obsessing about what CRM you're using, what email, blah, blah, blah. Just pick something and use it, and
That's great.
I mean, I looked hideous, but I was like, it's almost easier to look terrible. It's almost easier to put it out when you look really, really, really bad like that than when you're like, I kind of look. So anyway,
That's a good point. Yeah.
I actually reposted that a month or two ago,
That's
even though I had
awesome.
done it like 2 years ago, because it's still relevant. I mean, people they obsess about all the shiny objects, all the tools, instead of thinking about what they're doing and why.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point here too. That's another great lesson for folks when it comes to content. That's another hang up that they have, right? Is I'm gonna make a video a week or whatever. Like, how am I possibly gonna know what to say? Especially come
Yeah,
week 3,
I
right? Or
know.
the
Yeah.
fifth video in, like I can't possibly know. And this is another just amazing thing that happens when you start doing this. And it's important to make the commitment. Like, I'm going to do this once a week video on
Uh
this
huh.
time. Consistency is huge, because then what happens too, you start to filter your entire world through that filter, through that lens of, oh, well, something will happen, just
Yeah,
like you
that's so
talking about your
true.
mowing. Something will
Yeah.
happen. You're like, oh, I could talk about this and how it relates to, like, it
Hmm.
just happens. So that I bring that up to alleviate that fear for folks of, what am I possibly going to talk about? Number one, you're an expert and you can get some things down to
Yeah.
prompt you on that kind of stuff. But you're not going to run out, because
Yeah.
life just brings it to you, as you go.
Yeah, but you're right that if it is at the forefront of your mind, it just makes you more aware of the things that are going on, and then it clicks. Monifa is asking, she said, is TubeBuddy easy to use? She's not used to editing or putting content on YouTube. Monifa, that's why you need Jason.
Monifa, yeah, it's a plug-in tool that's and it's not for editing or doing anything with your videos other than giving you, basically a research tool. I think there's
Yeah,
there's probably 100 things it can do that I don't
can
even
do the
use it
same
for,
thing. Yeah,
but I use it specifically as that keyword. And yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory, and of course they have a ton of instruction videos and all of that.
yeah. Okay. Oh my God, we've been on here almost an hour.
Oh my goodness.
I don't feel like we've been talking that long. I feel
I
like I could
know.
talk to you all night. Okay, Jason, tell everybody how they can find out more about you, how they can connect with you, and how they can work with you.
Awesome. Yeah, LinkedIn is the greatest place to just like connect with me. Tell me on the show here. There's some context around it. We'll connect, have a conversation. Um, check out Strategy and Action. Strategyactionshow .com is the site for the show, or
Mhm.
any podcast or YouTube platform you can find it. Really happy with that. Got another show called Concentric. You're supposed to have one call to action for everybody, but I'm gonna give you a bunch.
Yeah, no. Wait, I want them all.
So concentricshow.com is that do that show with a friend of mine that he's an amazing guy. We talk alignment and relationship and all of that kind of stuff, which is fun. And then my site is medialeadsco.com.
Okay. Yeah, and there's a really good video on there, y'all, where Jason is describing the what do you call the product? The video? Forgotten.
The content growth system.
Yes, the content
Yeah.
growth system. There's a short video on there where he's describing and he shows you everything that you get. So, I was on there watching it earlier. It's really helpful to understand everything that you get, and it's like, oh my God, that's like a gold mine of
Thank you.
stuff. Yeah. So I'm going to do a call to action that I always forget to do. My two books are Boomer Cash Out, which is about how people can increase the value and marketability of their business to sell for retirement. It's very short, layman's terms. It's just why you got to get off your ass and do stuff if you ever want to sell your business. And then Disrupt Your Now, the Successful Entrepreneur's Guide to Reimagining your business and life. And that is because I'm so tired of people going, one day I'm going to do this and someday. Like,
And
no.
I love, and I'll tell you, I'm 25% in. Kindle tells me 25. So chapter 4 or 5, so in there. I'm loving it. I love
Oh,
the
you're reading
format.
it?
Hell yeah.
Oh,
And
okay,
so
good.
that it's such a great, because you're using people who've been on the show and examples and
Mhm.
stuff like that in there, but it's not just this version that's, oh, this person was on the show and this is what they said and here's a transcript of what they said. Like, I've seen those
Yeah,
books and what is
yeah.
happening, but it's a great interweaving of just like, here's this lesson, here's this point, and then an example of each one from people who've been on the show. It's done really well. So
Well, thank you.
I'm
I
excited to
appreciate it.
keep going.
Thank you. And a lot of people weren't even on the show. It was just people that I interviewed that people were like, oh, and when I first started writing it, I was going to have like 10 people. And my cousin was the guy, Charles, that did the afterward, we were going to do it together. And then I kept adding more people. And I was like, I don't want to just have a chapter in each person. So it evolved into what it is. But I half jokingly call it a bathroom book for business because you can just open it up anywhere and start reading.
Yeah.
So it's you don't have to read from beginning to end. So, but I'm glad you like it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank
Y'all
you
go.
for having me. This is a blast.
Yeah.
Again, just like you were saying, I could talk forever on this. This is so
Yep.
much fun.
Okay. Thanks, Jason. I'll talk with you later.
All
Bye.
right.
See you,
Bye-bye.
Monifa.
Bye, Monifa.